You have to say, well, why did it succeed where others did not? There's a tremendous bias against taking risks. Everyone is trying to optimize their ass covering. Starting and growing a business is as much about the innovation, drive, and determination of the people behind it as the product they sell. I think we have a duty to maintain the light of consciousness to make sure it continues into the future. Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough. Being an entrepreneur is like eating glass and staring into the abyss of death. Don't delude yourself into thinking something's working when it's not, or you're gonna get fixated on a bad solution. If you're the co-founder or CEO, you have to do all kinds of tasks you might not want to do. If you don't do your chores, the company won't succeed. No task is too menial. Really pay attention to negative feedback and solicit it, particularly from friends. Hardly anyone does that, and it's incredibly helpful. We have a strict no assholes policy at SpaceX. I don't think it's a good idea to plan to sell a company. Talent is extremely important. It's like a sports team. The team that has the best individual player will often win. But then there's a multiplier from how those players work together and the strategy they employ. You shouldn't do things differently just because they're different. They need to be better. My proceeds from PayPal acquisition were $180 million. I put $100 million into SpaceX, $70 million in Tesla, and $10 million in Solar City. I had to borrow money for rent. You get paid in certain proportion to the difficulty of the problems you solve. No, I don't ever give up. I'd have to be dead or completely incapacitated. If you need inspiration, don't do it. Any product that needs a manual to work is broken. One of the really tough things is figuring out what questions to ask. Once you figure out the question, then the answer is relatively easy. Constantly think about how you could be doing things better. They were building a Ferrari for every launch, when it was possible that a Honda Accord might do the trick. Rockets are cool. There's no getting around that. If you had to buy a new plane every time you flew somewhere, it would be incredibly expensive. There are some important differences between me and Tony Stark. Like, I have 5 kids, so I spend more time going to Disneyland than parties. I had so many people try to talk to me out of starting a rocket company. It was crazy. There have to be reasons that you get up in the morning and you want to live. Why do you want to live? What's the point? What inspires you? What do you love about the future? If the future does not include being out there among the stars and being a multi-planet species, I find that incredibly depressing. If you go back a few hundred years, what we take for granted today would seem like magic, being able to talk to people over long distances, to transmit images, flying, accessing vast amounts of data, like an oracle. These are all things that would have been considered magic a few hundred years ago. I'm extremely confident that solar will be at least a plurality of power, and most likely a majority in less than 20 years. Humans need to be a multi-planet species. I've actually made a prediction that within 30 years, a majority of new cars made in the United States will be electric. And I don't mean hybrid, I mean fully electric. What I'm trying to do is to make a significant difference in spaceflight and help make spaceflight accessible to almost anyone. I'm increasingly inclined to think that there should be some regulatory oversight, maybe at the national and international level, just to make sure that we don't do something very foolish. In order for us to have a future that's exciting and inspiring, it has to be one where we have a space-bearing civilization. People work better when they know what the goal is and why. It is important that people look forward to coming to work in the morning and enjoy working. Great companies are built on great products. I don't spend my time pontificating about high-concept things. I spend my time solving engineering and manufacturing problems. I don't create companies for the sake of creating companies, but to get things done. Starting a business is not for everyone. Starting a business, I'd say, number one, is have a high pain threshold. Being an entrepreneur is like eating glass and staring into the abyss of death. Constantly seek criticism. The key to making things affordable is design and technology improvements, as well as scale. Patience is a virtue, and I'm learning patience. It's a tough lesson. I could either watch it happen or be a part of it. I've actually not read any books on time management. If your customers love you, your odds of success are dramatically higher. One bit of advice: it is important to view knowledge as sort of a semantic tree. Make sure you understand the fundamental principles, i.e., the trunk and big branches, before you get into the leaves, details, or there is nothing for them to hang on to. When I was a little kid, I was really scared of the dark. But then I came to understand dark just means the absence of photons in the visible wavelength 400 to 700 nanometers. Then I thought, well, it's really silly to be afraid of a lack of photons. Then I wasn't afraid of the dark anymore after that. I always invest my own money in the companies that I create. I don't believe in the whole thing of just using other people's money. I don't think that's right. I'm not going to ask other people to invest in something if I'm not prepared to do it so myself. One thing I have learned in a long life, that all our science measured against reality is primitive and childlike. And yet it is the most precious thing we have. My passion for social justice has often brought me into conflict with people, as has my aversions to any obligation and dependence I did not regard as absolutely necessary. Two things are infinite: the universe and human stupidity, and I'm not sure about the universe. If you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. It would be possible to describe everything scientifically, but it would make no sense. It would be without meaning, as if you described a Beethoven symphony as a variation of wave pressure. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existence. One cannot help but be in awe when he contemplates the mysteries of eternity, of life, of the marvelous structure of reality. It is enough if one tries merely to comprehend a little of this mystery each day.